thank you all for coming out. My name is Ann Gislason, and I teach here at New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. And on behalf of NOCA, and especially the NOCA Creative Writing Program, we'd like to welcome you here to this pretty extraordinary event. As you know, this is a brand new building. It literally just opened up a few weeks ago, and we were thinking about how fitting it is that this is our inaugural event here for the Creative Writing Department. And actually for the arts programs, there have been art openings here at Five Press Gallery, but this is kind of the first that's purely NOCA oriented. And how extraordinary it is to inaugurate that with the words and the spirit of Kendall, Daigle, who I was lucky enough to teach a few years ago. And I'd like to acknowledge some of our other teachers that are here too, Laura Naughton and Andy Young. And I think, I'm not sure if Sarah isn't here, but and we were also talking about in terms of being lucky enough to have taught Kendall, that we were always so struck whenever she would turn in, whether it was a poem or a piece of short fiction, we were all just kind of stunned, but the originality and the freshness and the depth of feeling. And actually, if y'all, there's a really wonderful write-up of Kendall and her work that's on the literary blog New Orleans, Room 220. And I encourage you all to look it up, and it's kind of far more eloquent than I could say here. And what's very gratifying about that review is it was written by another NOCA graduate who actually didn't know Kendall, but Taylor Moreau, who wrote it, went here years ago, and she was very moved by it, and she wrote a beautiful piece. And it's always gratifying as a teacher when your students surpass you in a way like that, so I encourage you to look up, to just Google Kendall's book. But it really feels like very much like a NOCA event. We have musicians, Kyle and Marissa, who attended NOCA. The work here is done by NOCA artists, and so it's all very much in the spirit of Kendall. So with that, I would like to introduce Michelle Daigle, who put all this together with incredible fortitude and passion and love.
As Ann mentioned, I'm Michelle Daigle, but I know most of y'all, but I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for coming out today. Thank you for our family, Kendall's family, friends, and writers, and as well as just lovers of literature. Thank you all for coming out here today. Also, I did want to thank Ann and Laura Naughton and everyone from the Creative Writing Program. They've built a wonderful program, and it really inspired Kendall. It gave her that identity as a writer, and it really gave her the skills to really become a very fine writer. So thank you. And I wanted to let you know how important this project was. It's helping Kendall realize her dreams. She wanted to be published. In fact, she had a dedication for a yet unwritten book that she wanted to be dedicated wildly. So whatever that means, that's one of the reasons why we're here today. And another one of her dreams that I'm hoping that the book might help realize is that she did want to change the world. And as big as that sounds, maybe it's possible through a book that she can make a difference in this world in some way. I wanted to recognize what I'm calling the Soul Team, and they're the team that really made this book possible. So I am going to hopefully not embarrass y'all, but I cannot say enough about how happy I am that you all helped me. So Gabby, will you please stand? Gabrielle Stibe. Sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you. Gabby came to my house one day, and she had a stack of Kendall's writings, and that was the beginning of this book. Gabby, thank you so much for all you've done, and you've seen it through, and you've gotten us to where we are today. Thank you. Okay, Sage Rose, please stand. Sage is a multi-talented artist. Sage drew the cover for Kendall's book. He's also a musician and a writer, and as Kendall would say, and multi-talented at everything. So thank you so much. This book, this cover, it really captures Kendall's spirit. So thank you. And Eric Kiesvetter, will you please stand? Eric passionately took on this project. He didn't know Kendall, but he knew the story, and he just took on this project with this momentum that I felt so honored that he gave it his attention and his talent. And Eric has this tremendous creativity, and so he came up with the whole concept, and in the end result was an absolutely beautiful picture of Kendall. You really do get Kendall's personality. For those of you that don't know her, you really will get a sense of Kendall when you see this book. Eric was the designer, the printer, and I just can't thank you enough for all that you did. Thank you. And Benjamin Morris, please stand. Ben is an accomplished author, and he was the editor of this book. Benjamin took on this project with great enthusiasm, and Benjamin took everything from, he really kind of gave the flow of the book, and he poured through countless hours and went through during these months proofing and formatting Kendall's book, and he really showcased Kendall's work and all of his work. So thank you so much, Benjamin. And I don't think Yuka Petz is here. She was going to try to come in at some point this evening, but hopefully she'll be able to come by. But I did want to recognize her. She's responsible for hand binding the books, which I really didn't realize that was a thing. But this was Eric's concept, and it just so happened that I was going through some of Kendall's writings, and that was one of the things she had planned to do, was have a book that was hand-bound. So that was just amazing. And Yuka, she's done a beautiful job, and she's also really brought this whole tradition back to New Orleans. So if you see Yuka, please thank her. And I also want to thank everyone else that helped out with the books, and I'm not recognizing. Thank you for all the memorials. There are some memorials that are in the back of the book that some of Kendall's dear friends have added, so thank you so much for those. And I don't want to forget the hospitality ladies, Nakia and Kedrian, in the back. Thank you. I don't want to leave anybody out. So the Ulster Project teens, they were in the Ulster Project with Kendall. They're going to be helping give out the books after our reading. So thank you to Eric, Amanda, and Andrew. And also my right-hand ladies, Dominique and Lindsay. Okay. And the wine ladies, Julie and Darby. Okay, one other thing I wanted to let y'all know that this event is being filmed, and the reason why we wanted to do this is for Kendall's big sister, Taylor. Taylor can't be with us. She's living in Spain right now, so I just wanted to thank Taylor for, Taylor's kind of behind the scenes because she couldn't be here, but I would say her big input, which Kendall would really appreciate, is that she wanted to make sure that I didn't censor the book. So some of Kendall's, what would you say, like colorful language, I had to put back in. So thank you, Taylor. We love you. Okay, so that's enough for me for now, but I did want to invite Eric to come up to talk about the design and printing process. And after Eric comes up, I'd like Ben to come up and just talk about your experiences with editing Kendall's book. Thank you.
My name is Eric Kiesewetter, and thanks for the wonderful introduction, and thanks for the whole team being able to make this all happen. So I got an email, I want to say a few months back. It was kind of a mysterious email about wanting to put together a publication like this, and it was a bit maybe out of what I know really how to do. I usually work with art institutions and work with galleries and artists, and I was like, wow, okay, this is something that we can do in a literature sense and maybe try to capture some sort of spirit with this publication. And so it was a wonderful chance to meet with Michelle and Gabrielle when I got back to town, and we went through everything together. And what I got from it is that she had this girl that was really full of life, and we wanted to do something that was kind of capture her and make this living document of her work. And I wanted it to be a bit of a kind of almost like a dreamlike state. It seems like through some of her writings it was just kind of like weaving in and out. And so with this process, I found out then it was through Anne. I worked with her on the last Umbra publication. I helped produce that for the students last year. They designed it here, and I kind of like walked them through the process of how we print everything. It was a chance for NOCA to print something differently, and so the technique that we use is it's with a risograph, which is basically a mimeograph from olden days, which is a cylinder that is kind of like a hand crank, this kind of printing, but this is automated. And so we have a set number of colors that we can use, and it has a kind of a 1960s newspaper kind of feel. It feels very organic, it feels fresh, and it kind of seemed to capture the style of her. And that's why we went with this kind of process. And so it was through Anne that we all worked on this together. And so with Gabrielle, we worked together to try to find some pieces through some of her notes and through some of her texts that we can maybe add these little kind of surprises within the publication. And so I'm sure you'll see those as well. So yeah, it was a really interesting project, and I think a really beautiful publication came out of it. So thanks again for this chance.
How is this? Can you hear me at the back? If I drop my voice, just throw something. There seem to be some portable objects floating around in the room, which might do nicely. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. Thank you for your kind attention to such a special book and such a special evening. This is a really extraordinary project, and allow me first to thank Michelle and Eric and Anne, Gabby, and everybody who is involved in the project for the great honor of having served as the editor. It is a genuine privilege, a rare privilege, to be entrusted with the care and the handling of another's words. And it's not something that comes along very often, and so I'm very grateful for that opportunity, because these are some very, very beautiful and special and dear and important words that we have with this evening. I want to just say a few quick things about the editing process, because the point is to get directly onto the work. We don't want to wait any longer than we have to before we get to the actual poems. But I do want to say just a few quick things about what went into the process, and maybe call your attention to some aspects of Kendall's work that are worth noticing. You will love these poems. I guarantee you that. They are extraordinary. They are on fire. These poems are absolutely amazing. For someone of her age, for 19, I still find myself incredulous that they're that good at this age. This is really special. Kendall loved language. She really loved language. She loved its possibilities. She loved its pleasures. She loved its textures. She loved its surprises. She loved everything about it, and she loved this art for its own sake, which is increasingly rare in this very commodified world that we live in. She loved the pleasure of working with language simply because of what it could do. And you'll find that in the poems and in the stories and even in the play that she wrote, which is in the middle of the book. It's very rare to find somebody, especially at this age, who just took such delight in the possibilities of the language we speak. And so one of the things that I'd like to call your attention to as you read through these poems, Henry James, the novelist Henry James, once said that a writer is someone on whom nothing is lost. Let's dwell on that for a second. A writer is one on whom nothing is lost. That's Kendall Daigle. What makes her so good is her power of observation. She has a superb eye, an extraordinary ear. She's paying attention all the time. She pays attention to people. She pays attention to places. She pays attention to surfaces. She pays attention to depths. She pays attention to conversation. She pays attention to sound and rhythm and sense and all of these things, which in our normal walk with language we take absolutely for granted, but not Kendall. She's always listening, always watching. It's a hallmark, and it's really extraordinary to see that develop. She loved life as much as she loved language, and she loved the complexity of life and the sensuality of life, the difficulty of life, the humor, the physicality, all of these things, and it shows in her work. It's a remarkable talent, it's a remarkable promise, and a remarkable potential that we have collected. Now, I have to say this, in all honesty, and Taylor picked up on this in her piece for Room 220, which is what I absolutely echo Anne's comment. If you have a moment, please look up that write-up. It is lovely. It is very beautifully and sensitively done. Excuse me. One of the things that I first loved about Kendall's work, just in the first reading of it, this is going to sound a little funny, but I promise you it's true. She made the right mistakes. Right? She made the right mistakes. She lineated in the wrong place because she was so excited to get to the next line of her poem that she didn't bother to figure out whether you should end a poem on a preposition or not. You don't really end lines of poems on prepositions, in case we don't have many poetry writers in the room. It's just not something that's very often done. But she didn't care about that because she was so alive to the possibilities of the poem that she had to finish it and had to find out what was there. Things like that, which just automatically endear you to her work and show that she's on the right track. It's like a skier just going downhill and picking up so much speed they can't stop, they don't want to stop, they wouldn't stop for all of the medals and video camera footage in the world. They're just in it for the pleasure. They're in it for the ride. So one of the things that we did have to do, to a certain extent, a very minor extent I will say, was help bring out some of the craft elements in her work. And you'll see in her poems that not quite as many as you might have first read several months ago when we were looking at the manuscript end on prepositions or words like the, which is another word you probably don't want to end a line of a poem with. So we worked with those to bring out their strongest selves. But other than that, we did very little because the work stands by itself. One of the things that Taylor picked up on, and this is the last thing I'll say, one of the things that Taylor picked up on in her review of the book was Kendall had an extraordinarily strong voice, a very strong voice, especially for someone of her age. It can take years, it can take decades to develop a sense of self and a voice on the page, as opposed to in everyday conversations and interactions. But Kendall had it. She had it from very early on. She had a voice as a writer, as a poet, as a playwright, as a prose writer, as a storyteller. She had a voice as a New Orleanian. She had a voice as a woman. She had a voice as a student. She had a voice in so many different respects, and it was so fully formed. You will be astounded at the confidence and the strength of her work. So that honesty, that fearlessness, and that courage which comes out in her work is one of the lasting hallmarks of it. Writers have to go to places that we would rather sometimes not go. I'll be honest with you about that. But it's a calling and a responsibility, and Kendall fulfilled that in ways that poets twice and 3 times her age could only have ever dreamed of doing. So, of course, her loss is immeasurable. It's too great to express in words, but what we do have of her here, we absolutely should celebrate. And I have no doubt, absolutely no doubt in the world, that Kendall would have gone on to do even more extraordinary things than she did here, because she already did. So, here to share the first round of her works are Kelly Ori and Dominique Desautels.
It is in these places of birth where we sometimes disappear. Most of what I write is a gift from hunger and despondence, as if in emaciation I could stand to tell a crowd a lie of some sort of joy Josephine Sacabo knows. Once my mother let me bring you to the family home on the shore of a brown gulf, an ancient, modest house where all my ancestors were born, where incessant sweeping still left inches of grime, and light struggled through nearly opaque windows to illuminate dust as it danced like magic in the stale air between us. The family sat in the sand and watched the sun's fire dampen and die on the wet horizon. We stayed inside, and you pulled your hair from behind your back. I watched your fingers tug at the knots and soothe the rough waves. You pulled me into the fast-fading square of light. We became shadows, nearly silhouettes, and no one has seen us since. Pack of wolves. Most of my friends are astronauts. I was raised by a pack of wolves. I have a compass that is magnetized to whatever I want. I'm double-jointed in every joint in my body. I have a pair of gills for spending time underwater. Compositions I've written have caused 10 million women to go into labor. I have moon shoes. I see beards on everyone. I have 13 holes in my body. I know who Jack the Ripper is. I swallowed bits of glass. I untied my belly button and watched my organs unravel. I rode a golden retriever from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. When I closed my eyes, I found you. I clenched my fists and found them full of your hair. My bones itch. I'm in love with you. I know that because I think of you when I'm thinking of nothing. You are my resting heartbeat and my active one. I think of you in every context. I say your name as often as I'm not with you as I am. When I can, I hold your head to my chest or kiss you or stroke your hair. When I can't, I look at you and long to. I see you in my sleep. My mind connects everything before me to something you said or did. You haunt my bed. You're with me everywhere. I miss you terribly. I never miss you at all.
Is this real life? Polaroid killed itself. I found the last pack of film in my parents' closet and took pictures of my friends by a fig tree. Time stretches before me like an insomniac's calendar, a threatening continuum, despicable. Au revoir. I'm off to observe and to revel in concern. I'm concerned by all things, everything and the strange in-between things. I'm Lewis and Clark. I'm NASA. I'm studying the backdrop for eternity. I'm painting the book of many revelations. My hands, after a day of painting, my hands are black. You hold them and anticipate the blackness's spread. You wait for sickness to consume me, but it's just paint.
Bump in the road. I just roll on, as indifferent as a car. A bump in the road shakes me momentarily, but my engine keeps twisting its intricate innards. Was it living? Did it hurt it? Was it a shard of desire? Did it hurt me? I never really work to get these answered. I just look for a new road, maybe even a comfortable garage. With every stop sign and light that shines red, I get excited, thinking I've found a bed. But the rest terminates. I keep going, not knowing where or why. I suppose I shall be depressed until my death. But I've got my God, who'll be everything great that nothing else is. Thanksgiving Miracle. When I arrived at the family house in Ponchatoula, I vomited a final time by the car and sat next to it in a stranger's lawn to collect myself. I fixed my hair and makeup and dove in. After greeting everyone, I made a plate, took a bite of turkey, and excused myself, for I could not stop the room from its uncomfortable tilting. I smoked a cigar on the back porch and watched my cousin's 4-year-old kicking a soccer ball around. I asked him if I could join. Next thing I knew, I was surrounded by 6 children, and they wanted to jump on the trampoline. Putting out my cigar and unlacing my boots, I felt like one of the kids again. The obvious leader of the group, a stunning 5-year-old named Jocelyn with dirty blonde barrel curls and $1 million grin, introduced me to a game where I was to lie in the middle of the trampoline with my eyes closed, and they were to jump in a circle around me, singing lullabies. If they stopped singing, I could extend my arms and legs in a jerking fashion, as she demonstrated, and figuratively squirt them with lava. So, I closed my eyes, and 12 tiny feet jolted my aching body this way and that. Their innocence lifted the disease from me. 6 tiny voices sang, "Hush, little baby." I was entirely ready to die. It was a thing of heaven making a rare appearance on earth, and for the likes of me nonetheless.
Potholes. The moon spills into the sidewalk's gorges, filling the potholes and gathering at the curbs. This is not what it was meant for, but it can't help it, any more than my friends can help but recess into black holes of opiates, as if they want to rent out their porcelain bodies. We need something stronger to keep us safe in the cemeteries, drunk and wandering, musing on our own deaths and smiling at epitaphs. We are so full of love and so easily torn to pieces. Our families are absent or present, like the stars in the abyss. They are nothing and no one can stop the unfolding of years in its madness. I'm already older than I was ever prepared to be, and I miss everything while wanting none of it. I want clean, clear skies. I know whose hand I want to hold, which artists are sincere, regardless of where they stand on the eternal conflict. I feel the same as everyone, and I don't want to fight.
feels as though they simply had to exist. Thank you. 3 more for you. Hope for humanity. My body makes me sin, Lord. Burn me to ashes. Erode me into the earth, and if I try to breathe on my own again, please burn each fleshy stubble. Let my spirit be a lighthouse in dark hurricanes, not fearing to illuminate. And if a fisherman denies you, spewing from my head, he can sail in the opposite direction, but still shine. I have one reason to shine, one reason to burn. I love you. And let this love consume me and control me, so that when the earth looks upon me, they see you. Though they may be stupid and blind and wicked, let me drink from your wisdom, so I may better tolerate idiocy. Lord, here are my talents. Only you know how to expend them to maximum goodness. Lord, here are my sins. I'm sick with them. They bring me only horrid fruit. Secretly stationed in the depths of my innards was a thirst that shook its head, staring at the ground, at each overindulging abuse I welcomed. Subconsciously, its hope would sneak into my depression. I was so saturated in my deliciously hollow sins. Why for so long did I malnourish myself with those plastic pastries and beautifully elaborate empty goblets? When I, from before my first breath, knew that honest, eternal satisfaction was begging to possess me. But how I pity the past. And I open my petals to the smiling future. I cry all night for the withered around me, and in the morning I can see them frosted in dew, mourning their late innocence and fruitless wishes made on clocks in a sorry effort to find they don't even know what. I have to say, let's just meditate on that one line right in the middle of the poem, right there for 1 second. Let me drink from your wisdom, so I may better tolerate idiocy. I told you she was funny. She's fantastic. It's a useful line if you're ever having like a really rough day at work, or somebody's kind of on your case about something, and just think about that line. I promise it'll get you through it. Full belly. This is for those of you who can't see the poem, I'd simply point out this is one of Kendall's more spare poems. It's open form, not much punctuation, in fact none, and it's intended to be a much more, it doesn't have the same conversational style as some of her poems do. It's a little bit more open than that. So, full belly. Thank you, God. My belly is full, and I am an amphibious soul sliding down a drainage ditch with others like me. We're happy, and for the first time in history, committed to no one but the sacrosanct self. At the bottom of the slope, we will pour into the creek where our mothers used to bathe. It's the place of our birth. She's wonderful. This last piece, we weren't sure originally whether we would read it when Michelle and I talked about it, but this is actually, as we understand it, it's a prose piece, a very short one. It's the last known piece that she wrote before she passed away. And it's called Untitled Journal Entry because that's all that we know about it. It was found in her journal, and we read it, transcribed it, cleaned it up just a tiny little bit where there were one or two things which just needed a quick tweak. But other than that, it was perfect. And we don't understand it, but it felt necessary to include. And so it's actually the last of her works in the anthology. So, untitled journal entry. A bureaucrat of the divine descends upon my balcony where I sit contemplating smoke rings with a voice that transcends the AC unit for Rite Aid and speaks these words. Kendall, Michelle, Daigle, we have cross-referenced the appetites of your soul with the morality you practice, and considering the content of your character and the social conditions which have fostered your loss of innocence, by our standards, you're doing okay. You'll get it. We have a crystal ball, and we looked into it and saw you getting it. Hang in there. What you consider depravity is simply a healthy reaction to an all-toxic environment. I think she got it.